So Dragon Ball Sparking Zero is officially out, and I really thought I was going to skip out on playing this since I'm not really an arena fighter player, but damn, it is just so hard not to buy into the hype when you see Sparking Zero clips of all the super cool visuals, unique interactions, and what if scenarios, especially if you're a fan of Dragon Ball. I haven't really played any arena fighters before, but I wanted to make a comparison of exactly how different Sparking Zero is from a traditional fighting game, and if the skills you obtain from traditional fighters can carry over to this game. Let me just start off by saying, if you've ever wanted to play as your favorite Dragon Ball characters and live out your power fantasy in a traditional fighting game, go play Dragon Ball FighterZ. It is the Dragon Ball fighting game. But if you're watching this, you probably already know that. I'm going off the assumption that you are aware that Sparking Zero is not a traditional fighter at all. Korea Gaming made an amazing video classifying the different types of fighting games, and games like Sparking Zero are on the opposite end of traditional fighting games in the arena fighters category. I hope we can all agree that Sparking Zero is not a traditional fighting game. It isn't trying to be one, it never will be one. It's an arena fighter. It's just fun entertainment. Sure, you can play it competitively, I'm not going to yuck anyone's yum, but at the end of the day, the devs are not trying to turn this into an esport or anything. That being said, this game is fun. I'm glad I bought it and I'm having a blast and feeling like a kid again as I replay some of the most iconic Dragon Ball fights in the single player modes, and finding the interesting what if scenarios that could be unlocked. So let's have some fun by looking at this game in a different light and see what exactly is shared between this game and traditional fighters. Again, just for fun. I'm going to separate this video by things that are similar to traditional fighters, and then I want to talk about some things that I personally like about Sparking Zero's combat, and things that make me question their existence in the game. So let's compare the concrete stuff that you can do in both traditional fighting games and in Sparking Zero. So the obvious thing is that both games have combos and a combo system. Of course, the inputs in Sparking Zero are more simplified, with your standard combo being continuously pressing your melee attack button in quick succession to do a rush attack, but there's also a little bit more depth to the combos than just that. You can end your attack chain by pressing your key attack button, which normally shoots ki blasts, and pressing that button at the end or in between your melee attack chain will do something different depending on your character's moveset. Although you can do multiple different attack chains in one combo, it's not a true combo. An opponent holding the guard button will be able to guard in between these attacks, except if they're being attacked from behind. This game also lets you have true combos into your super moves to confirm a hit. Speaking of confirming a hit, there are indeed hit confirms in this game. Violently mashing the melee attack button will leave you minus on block for the final hit and open to an attack from the enemy. This means you'll want to hit confirm before continuing to end your combo. If you end it early and choose to do another action instead, you won't be open for a punish attack. There's probably a lot of other hit confirm examples, but I won't get into every single one of them in this video. Do punishes count as a fighting game thing? I feel like there's punishes in every game with combat. I mean, you could whiff punish in League of Legends, right? Does that make League a fighting game? Anyways, there's whiff punishes in this game too. If an opponent were to whiff a big beam attack or a special attack where they rush at you, you can dodge the attack with your movement options and punish the attack with an attack of your own. It doesn't only have to be special attacks though, just a simple melee or dash attack can be sidestepped and punished. These next two aspects of the game go hand in hand, but this is probably the aspect of Sparking Zero that caught my attention to purchase the game and make this video in the first place. So there's high and low blocking when defending. You have a normal block, and then you can move your analog stick up or down to block high or low. So if there's high and low blocking, then that means that this game also has an overhead and low attacks to help get through your opponent's defenses. These attacks have to be charged though. To charge an overhead, you have to press down and the melee attack button. Or during a combo, you could press your key attack button and down on the analog stick to charge a low. Those are the universal ways I've found to do high and lows, but some characters also have them built into their kits. If your opponent successfully guards a high or low, they're able to retaliate and get a combo. If they hold neutral block, then their guard will be broken. If they guess completely wrong, then they'll get hit. I guess having a block button and a high or low block is kind of similar to Mortal Kombat now that I think about it. Another fighting game concept that's in this game is the neutral game, of course. This is how the fight plays out when both fighters are neither blocking or getting hit by anything. Although the fights in Sparking Zero can look like a mash fest with dashes going everywhere, characters vanishing and teleporting all over the place, all of these things can be answered and countered accordingly if you're looking out for them. If your opponent is dragon rushing constantly, you can look out for it next time, dash back to get behind them and punish them with some back shots. If your opponent is staying back and throwing Ki Blasts and mashing Perception when you approach, you can Dragon Rush to get through the Ki Blast and just start grabbing them until they respect your grabs and do something different. This may fall into the whole neutral game category, but this game has some lengthy rock, paper, scissors interactions once you're engaging the enemy. All of the options that you have in this game can really start to increase your mental stack if you're small brain like I am. It's more like playing rock, paper, scissors, hammer, fire, hydraulic press, slime, you get the idea. In traditional fighters, your basic strikes beat throws, throws beat blocking, and blocking beats strikes. In Sparking Zero, you have strikes, throws, blocks, Ki Blasts, Perception, Vanish, Invincible Dashes, Dragon Rush, Super Counters, Revenge Counters, and a bunch of other stuff. Which is fine, you can have a lot of game mechanics and be a great game, and to be fair, if we were comparing it to Street Fighter 6, then yeah, Street Fighter 6 has Drive Impact, Drive Rush, Drive Parry, Drive Reversal, and so on. But a lot of the interactions in Sparking Zero do not stop at the first interaction. For example, in Sparking Zero, you could win an interaction by sidestepping your opponent's attack and landing behind them, where you would, in theory, be able to get a true combo that they can't escape since you're attacking their backside. This would probably be the end of the interaction in a traditional fighting game where you're rewarded by getting a full combo to punish your opponent's predictability, except it isn't the end of the interaction. Your opponent can still mash an input for a super counter, which will allow them to counter an attack even when their back is turned. Granted, this is a 2-frame input according to some people, so let's say you're giving your opponent back shots and they super counter a hit. Well, when they super counter, they usually get a hit that'll push you away from them. Except this still isn't the end of the interaction. You can super counter your opponent's super counter.
Reach. Martin, please! Martin, please! Martin, please, on my mama! Yes!
And even if you don't want to risk hitting the 2-frame window for a super counter, you can vanish your opponent's super counter to dodge the counter and get behind them for an attack. And this still isn't the end of the interaction because your opponent can vanish your vanish, and then it can go on forever until someone messes up the timing or runs out of meter. This is probably only something that can be done if you're on task level of skill, but you can even super counter a vanish attack if you don't have any meter left to extend the interaction. That whole scenario is just an example of what I mean by long interactions that kind of feel like minigames at some points. Last thing I want to mention, since I didn't catch it at first, but since I take too long to make these videos, I actually saw this from a video by Diaphone about if Sparking Zero can be a competitive fighting game. Turns out this game actually has some option selects, which a lot of players might be doing without knowing it. You can mash a super counter input when you're being hit, and if you fail to hit it, you can option select instead to hit a vanish, which may not be the ideal scenario, but it's better than eating a full combo. There's probably a lot of other little things from traditional fighters that are present in Sparking Zero, like recoveries, the meter, team battles, but these were the big ones that stood out the most to me when it comes to the combat. So if you're interested in maybe picking up the game because you like Dragon Ball, but weren't sure if you would enjoy playing an arena fighter, hopefully this can help you make a decision. Coming from someone who has never played an arena fighter since maybe the first Budokai Tenkaichi game, I can see that there's a little bit more to the game than I originally expected. But if you're not a fighting game player, it doesn't mean that this is a difficult game to play. There's a lot of options, but you'll get used to them, and the game isn't that hard to pick up at all. If you're still not sure if you would enjoy the game, you could stick around for the bonus round of this video, where I just wanted to mention some parts of the combat I enjoy, and some parts I maybe don't enjoy as much. This isn't a review of Sparking Zero as a game, I just wanted to talk about the combat a little bit more. The most fun part of the combat for me is the movement options. There's so many ways to move and approach in this game that I often forget about the tools that I have available. You have basic movement, dashes, jumping, flying, dragon dashes, Z burst dash, quick ascend, quick descend, step and rush, step and sway, and speed of your movement and dashes changes depending on how close you are to the opponent. Maybe I'm just a sucker for the 3D movement because I've never played a modern arena fighter, but it feels good to move around and dash in this game. I also like the meter management aspect of the combat. Since a lot of the meta revolves around those Vanish Wars where you keep vanishing behind your opponent, the main thing you want to make sure is that you'll have more ki meter than your opponent so that if you do get in a Vanish War and no one messes up, then you'll be able to get the upper hand. Your ki meter is also super important because a lot of your good movement options are going to use that meter. It's kind of rare how often you'll be able to get regular super attacks off due to how much meter they usually cost, so a lot of 2-bar specials are super good for follow-ups. The speed of the game is also very fun. It adds a lot to the game since there's so many options you have when fighting to counter your opponent. that it challenges you to think quickly and anticipate what your opponent's going to do, rather than reacting to when they do it. Reactions do help a ton in this game. You can try to react to vanishes, dashes, counters, and my reactions are kind of ass, so I appreciate that this game can help me train on that. Last thing I want to mention that I like about this game that isn't just the combat is the DP point system that they have for ranked team battles. It's essentially the ratio system for Marvel vs. Capcom 2. So every character is assigned an amount of DP points, and you have 15 points to assign a team and take whichever characters have a sum of 15 DP points or below. It helps balance out the team battles when playing online, and although some characters and abilities can use some balancing and tweaking, I think they did a pretty good job on it. For the things I don't like, or rather in this case, don't understand about Sparking Zero, is that it feels like some of the options that you have in this game can feel like they have no point. Something that stood out to me is using your perception to deflect beam attacks, which cost 2 skill points, which is some pretty precious resources since they allow you to use some special skills, and they can also buff or transform your character. Skill points also can't be charged manually, so you have to build them up by fighting and defending in battle, similar to traditional fighters. This beam deflect move costs 2 skill points, but you can also just sidestep these beam attacks for free or simply vanish them for a little bit of ki. I get that it looks super cool, but I feel like that's the only point to it. Just to look cool or style on your opponent. There's some other small things like this that I don't understand game design wise, but maybe there will be a purpose found later in the game's life. Another thing I don't like about Sparking Zero's combat is super counters. A super counter is the counter where if you press up and the melee attack at the same time during a 2-frame window when you're being attacked, your character will deflect the attack and retaliate back. I don't hate super counters, I think this is a fine defensive move to have in the game. The only problem I have with it is that the super counter can be used even when you're taking back shots. I think that if you're able to successfully get behind your opponent and give them back shots, then you should be rewarded with a full combo. This is like having a burst from Guilty Gear or a combo breaker that you can use and attempt to do without any resources as long as you hit that 2-frame window. Which would normally be pretty difficult, but when you mash the input and you're playing in the Dragon Ball universe where every character does 10 hits a second, you're bound to land a super counter with just luck of the mash. You can also vanish the super counter, but then you can just get caught in another Vanish War. Maybe my opinion might be in the minority, but I don't like that you can get a super counter while getting hit in the back. It just makes it so that no combo is ever really a true combo.
Backshots or a good career?
I will pass on the backshots. I want to focus on myself.
Last thing I don't like about Sparking Zero is the Vanish Wars. I think everybody can agree with me on this, but the worst part about Vanish Wars is how often you could start one because of how prominent vanishing is as an option. If someone super counters you, you can vanish. If someone is following up on a combo with an attack, you can vanish it. If someone's trying to open you up with a charged high or low, you can vanish it. Since super counters and combo follow-ups are very common, that means you're getting into a potential Vanish War every time you choose to vanish those hits. I think this would be fine if it wasn't just the same rhythm every single time, but since it is, it almost always ends up being a battle of who has the most meter. I think an easy fix for this would just be to let the vanishes get faster with each hit, or have different timings to it that you can input so that you can add more interactions and mix-ups to the Vanish Wars. Honestly, other than that, I think the combat in Sparking Zero is pretty fun and it feels nice to play, and really most of the downsides of the combat can always be patched and updated over time if the devs really wanted to. I think that if you have experience with traditional fighters, it makes it super easy to learn how to play an arena fighter, and a lot of your fighting game experience will carry over. It's definitely not a game that I could see being played at the next EVO or anything, but with the amount of people playing the game, that's really all you need to be competitive. Will high-level Sparking Zero be fun to play? I think the game is still being figured out, so there's no sure way to tell. I wouldn't take it too seriously though. If you love Dragon Ball, it's an easy decision to just pick up the game and play some single player and maybe some casual or ranked matches until you get bored. There's so many characters, the visuals look amazing, and you can really live out your power fantasy with the characters you choose. Except maybe Mr. Satan. Good luck with that. I have a lot of other things I like and appreciate about Sparking Zero as a whole, as well as some more stuff that I don't like, but I didn't want to make this a video game review, so I'll just leave it at talking about the combat. So how are you guys liking Sparking Zero? Have you played any arena fighters before? Let me know in the comments, and if you liked the video and want to see more videos about fighting games or video games in general, please consider subscribing. I also have a video about getting into Marvel vs. Capcom 2 as a fighting game casual, so if any arena fighting game players are curious about getting into traditional fighters, you can check that video out as well. As always, thanks for watching, I'll see you guys in the next video. See ya!